So the anti-sexual harassment policy was signed for the judiciary by the former Chief Justice Raymond Zondo. He signed the long-awaited policy, which was headed by then Deputy Chief Justice Mandisa just before he retired. The policy sets out to ensure that all members of the judiciary have a safe and healthy working environment. So what do we make of the anti-sexual harassment policy? We bring in, and we're going to be speaking to Zikhona Ndlebe, who is a researcher of Democratic Governance and Rights Unit, and we also are in conversation with retired Judge Margie Victor. Ladies, a good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Such an important discussion, and Judge, I think I want to start with you because, you know, certainly there's the question around whether or not this was a legacy signature that we saw the former Chief Justice now, Raymond Zondo, signing on the dotted line for work that has been done by the former Deputy Chief Justice Mandisa on this long-awaited sexual harassment in the judiciary policy. Would you call it a legacy signature?
Yes, certainly. Although it was long in coming to fruition, and there was a lot of input from the South African chapter of the International Association of Women Judges. But on the eve of his retirement from an illustrious career, and still as Chief Justice then, he signed the anti-sexual harassment policy. And I think it's an outstanding pinnacle on which to end his career, which has been characterized really by his absolute dedication to the rule of law, justice, equality, and democracy. Like many of us, he sought to protect all in the workplace and its environment.
Yeah, and I think obviously it's important work to be done to deal with sexual harassment in the workplace, particularly in the judiciary. But Zikhona, I'm going to let you have your say here, and if you agree that this was the right timing. I mean, there's certainly something to be said about the fact that the Deputy Chief Justice Mandisa was working on this policy document for a long time. You've gotten to take a look at that policy document, talk about timing, and has it been done right?
We definitely think that the timing is right because we've been calling for a sexual harassment policy in the judiciary because there's not been any previously. So definitely the timing is right, and we are happy that a step has been taken towards the right direction. We have had sight of the policy, and the policy refers complainants or potential complainants to the JSC, the Judicial Service Commission, and the Magistrates Commission. And we think that is a bit concerning because we've done research over the past 2 years on sexual harassment in the courts, sexual harassment in the court building. We've had focus group discussions with lawyers, with judicial officers, and there's been a call for an independent, external independent body that will deal with sexual harassment in the court system. And the reason for the call is because the current complaint structures are said not to be effective enough when it comes to specifically sexual harassment. And the reason for that it is because it takes too long to have sexual harassment complaints dealt with. And this results in the secondary victimization of those who have brought the complaint. Yeah, but having the policy in place, it is a good step towards the right direction.
But is it correct, and you've had sight of the policy, is it correct that the final version shows, you know, on the first page, it's written March 2023, which is from the version that was submitted by Deputy Chief Justice then, Mandisa. And I don't know if that's an important point because it speaks to just how much consideration and attention to detail was put into this very document by the former Chief Justice. Is that an important point, Judge Victor?
Yes, certainly it has been given a lot of thought, and I hear what Zikhona is saying. But, you know, the very policy itself calls for expedited procedures and to deal with it as expeditiously as possible. Insofar as Zikhona has difficulty accepting that it would be independent, Zikhona, I think you've got to look at it in context. When it's been dealt with by the Judicial Conduct Committee or the Magistrates Commission, there is a lot of independence there. You know, one can perhaps have difficulty with timing, but the whole purpose of this policy is to deal with it as expeditiously as possible, as confidentially as possible, and then that no one is above the law. It stretches throughout to the highest office in the land. You know, the very purpose of the policy is not only to educate, prevent and encourage reporting and provide counseling, but it's to hold the perpetrators accountable. Now, once this policy is embedded in our judicial conduct and the magistracy conduct, the perpetrators will be held accountable, irrespective of the position they occupy. No one is above the law, as the saying goes. So while Zikhona might have reservations, I think at the end of the day, the amount of energy and purpose and commitment to this policy will really iron out those wrinkles that Zikhona is talking about.
Yeah, but Judge Victor, you have also mentioned that one of those wrinkles, if you will, is the issue of timing, and you agree that that's something that needs to be dealt with. In Zikhona, you're quoted as saying, judicial officers do not report incidents of sexual harassment because the existing complainants' structures are ineffective. But you also talk about the element of the power imbalance. The reality is, if I am a judicial officer and I am a victim of sexual harassment, the timing of the response is important, because I may very well on a daily basis be dealing with somebody who has a lot of power over what happens to me in the workplace. But and the thing is, Zikhona, is that you've got Judges Matter as well that has come out and said that this policy is not well considered. What then is the right approach? Because Judge Victor said, well, you do have independent structures, but the timing is indeed an issue, and there I think you both will agree.
Absolutely, we definitely agree on the issue of timing, because what we've said and what we've heard from the research that we've conducted is that, and even with the complaints that have been brought, they have taken over a year for them to be brought. Well, some of them have been brought to finality in the magistracy, and some are still pending before the JSC, before the Magistrates Commission. So the timing is a big problem. And the policy, it would have been great if the policy also had timeframes that are set in it as to how long it should take for a complaint to be dealt with. Also, you know, when it comes to sexual harassment, it's quite a sensitive issue. So people who've experienced sexual harassment, the first port of call would have to be that they need the psychological assistance or mental assistance. And hence I've mentioned we have been quoted that we've established a helpline with the SACA AWJ that enables people to first speak to a counselor before they think about lodging a complaint. So we think that mental and psychological support is also very important. So if the policy, but Judge Victor has already said that the wrinkles will be ironed out, which I'm glad to hear, because it means that the work has not ended with just having a policy. It means that there will be continuation of the work to fight against sexual harassment in the court system. Yeah,
Judge Victor, I'm going to come back to you, because, and we go back to 2022 when we saw the current Chief Justice in her JSC interview, and she touched on then a lack of a sexual harassment policy within the judiciary, and I think very important. And in that interview, she talked about how work is in the works. We're going to sort it out soon. Now she's the Chief Justice, and there's, of course, the sort of questions around, if you were in her position, what you do to improve on that policy, if you will, but also the lessons that we take for other sectors in our society on the importance of actually developing a policy that works, having the structures that are trusted and safe for victims to report. And also, you know, I suppose there's also the pressure that she has as a woman, right, Judge?
Yes. You know, we're very pleased that we have a woman Chief Justice, and that she's really been fundamental in designing this policy together with her team. But if you look at the policy, there's an obligation by the heads of court to monitor and implement this policy. There's also another important feature, and that is that the South African Judicial Education Institute, SAJ, will conduct ongoing structures and ad hoc training and awareness and sensitivity sessions. So this policy is far-reaching. And one must bear in mind now that it's formally implemented. And once there's a formal implementation, I believe that our Chief Justice is going to really speed things up and that it will have impact.
Yeah.
And can I just add this? Now
Sure.
there's an obligation to report when a victim has been sexually harassed. And it's done in a sensitive, I think, as Zikhona, you've referred to that. It's done in a sensitive way. There's counseling and also the context of confidentiality so that a victim, will feel safe to report. Rather than to have corridor rumors, it's much better that the victim reports and feels she can or he can do so in a safe environment, and that's the most important aspect of this policy.
Yeah, I quite like that we've got some data as well, Zikhona, and I'm keen to hear about the helpline for staff within the court system. Have you got some of the numbers on the numbers of complaints that have been received by that helpline?
So the helpline was established about 11 months ago. And the purpose of the helpline was to just give people the platform to get assistance, to know where to go if they've experienced sexual harassment. And also as a research unit, the DGRU, Judges Matter, when we're conducting research, we are not counselors. So we could not possibly provide any counseling assistance to people who have experienced sexual harassment. So from the helpline, we've received about 292 as of August, people contacting the helpline. And some of them want to speak about sexual harassment, physical assault. But the main point is that there's a big element of sexual harassment. And it cuts across the board, as I've said, where I've been quoted, that sexual harassment does not only happen to certain people, it happens to everyone. And the whole point of the helpline was to provide assistance to everyone in the court building. So it does not only deal with judicial officers. Court staff, clerks, registrars, cleaners, lawyers who attend court can also make contact to the helpline. So that is the data that we've collected that this far. And the helpline is still open, it's still ongoing. People who need to speak to a counselor, and it's manned by 2 counselors. It's quite confidential. As a researcher, we don't get any personal identifying data. But the only thing that we get from the helpline is just the numbers, that people are actually in need of assistance when it comes to sexual harassment in the court building.
Yeah, I really hope that other institutions, whether it be public sector, private sector, are listening to, the various, I suppose, institutional infrastructure that's been set up here and look to emulate. But there is something to be said about, the corridors of justice, the very corridors of our justice system. 292 calls logged for sexual harassment, physical assault in those very corridors. Very, very worrying. But Judge Victor, I'm going to let you have a final say, though. 292 in 11 months. What does that say about the work we have to do? And are you confident that we can bring those numbers down in the next 11 months?
Yes, it's a very alarming number of complaints. And I believe that with proper dedication and the safe environment that I've described, that number will go down. Remember, court staff, if they make a complaint against a judicial officer, it's going to be dealt with either by the Magistrates Commission or the Judicial Conduct Committee. But where there is staff inter se between themselves, if there is that kind of sexual harassment, they are the heads of their courts that they can report to. So I think that with time, this will branch out to really protect everybody within a court precinct will be protected. And remember, if it's an attorney or an advocate that is committing or perpetrating this sexual abuse, there are the professional bodies like the LPC that can be reported, or a bar council, for example.
Right.
So I think that the implementation of this policy will in fact be a beacon for others, and certainly, as you've said, in commerce, that they will look, here is a system that's functioning correctly, appropriately, and it'll be a beacon to emulate.
Yeah, we certainly hope so. Thank you. We really appreciate your time. Retired Judge Margie Victor speaking to us there, as well as researcher for Democratic Governance and Rights Unit, Zikhona Ndlebe. And I close off with that discussion with the thoughts of the current Chief Justice Mandisa Maya. Last year, when asked about where we are with developing a sexual harassment policy for judicial officers, she says very soon. I guess our guest saying very soon we'll get those numbers down as well.